I stood near the back of the reception hall, clutching a cheap purse and watching my sister glide across the dance floor in a custom white gown. People were clapping. Champagne glasses clinked. Flashbulbs popped. It was her perfect night. Then she grabbed the mic. Jasmine looked out at the crowd with a dazzling smile, but her eyes landed on me like a blade. She said, "She came alone. No husband, no money, just a useless kid." Laughter rippled across a few tables. My mother, sitting in the front row like a queen, leaned toward the photographer and said, "Let's not ruin the photos with her face." Something inside me cracked. I tried to hold my daughter's hand, but she had already let go. 8-year-old Sophie was walking across the dance floor past the stunned guests toward the DJ booth. No one stopped her. The DJ leaned down to hear her, confused. She handed him something from her little backpack and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she took the mic. Her voice was calm and clear. "I brought a video. Mom didn't know, but I think the groom should watch it before marrying her." The music cut. The room went completely silent. Glasses froze mid-air. My sister's smile dropped. The DJ looked at me. I nodded. And everything changed. I hadn't been to a family event in nearly 4 years. No birthdays, no Christmas dinners, not even Grandma Eloise's funeral. When I left my husband, the silence from my family wasn't subtle. It was sharp and deliberate. I became the disappointment, the walking cautionary tale of what happens when a woman chooses love over logic, motherhood over ambition, or herself over tradition. My name is Maya. I'm 33, a single mother, and the person my family keeps just close enough to mock but never close enough to care for. The only reason I got an invitation to Jasmine's wedding was because it would have looked bad not to invite me. Or maybe I was the accessory she needed, proof of how far she'd climbed, how shiny her life had become compared to mine. I almost didn't go. I sat at my kitchen table the night the invitation arrived, holding the envelope with her perfect cursive handwriting and matching wax seal. It felt more like a warning than a welcome. But then Sophie came into the room, munching on an apple, and saw it. "Is Aunt Jasmine getting married?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, sliding the card back into the envelope. "She is." "Are we going?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect her from the snide comments, the icy stares, the subtle and not-so-subtle digs my family loved to throw like confetti. But I also wanted her to feel like she belonged. She didn't have cousins. She didn't have aunts or uncles that visited. And her grandparents had been reduced to people she occasionally heard me argue with over the phone. I didn't want her to think that her world ended with just me. So I said yes. We didn't have much. I borrowed a dress from a coworker and found Sophie a little pink satin dress at a thrift store. She twirled in front of the mirror like she was a fairy princess. I smiled and told her she looked perfect. She told me I looked like a movie star. That was all I needed to hear. We drove 2 hours to the wedding venue. It was one of those restored barns converted into a rustic chic wedding hall. Giant chandeliers, long farmhouse tables, fresh white roses lining every wooden beam. I knew the moment we walked in that we didn't belong. Jasmine wore a couture gown, layered in silk and glittering stones. Her hair was swept up like she was about to walk a red carpet. People swarmed around her, complimenting her ring, her dress, her skin, her flowers. She spotted me across the room, gave a tight smile, and turned away without a word. My mother, sitting at a table full of her church friends, narrowed her eyes at me, then turned back to her wine. No one said hello. No one asked how I was doing. Not one person acknowledged Sophie except to ask whose child she was. I kept my back straight, kept smiling for Sophie's sake, and took photos of her walking through the rose garden behind the barn. She was the only reason I didn't get in the car and leave. When the ceremony started, we sat in the back. I watched my sister walk down the aisle with my stepfather at her side. My father, our real father, had passed away 2 years earlier, and no one mentioned him once. I thought of him constantly. He would have hated this wedding. He would have seen right through Jasmine's filtered version of herself. He would have sat with me. After the ceremony, we slipped into the reception hall. That's when it started. The subtle digs, the not-so-subtle laughs, the glances that said more than words ever could. At dinner, there was no place card for me. A waiter pointed to an empty chair by the bathroom. No one spoke to me except to move their purse or scoot their chair. Jasmine passed by me twice and didn't look once in my direction. I felt invisible. Sophie never left my side. She held my hand. She asked if I was okay. She pointed out a cupcake tower and tried to cheer me up. I smiled and told her I was fine. She looked unconvinced. I thought that would be the worst of it. I thought we would sit through dinner, maybe dance once, take a few photos, and leave quietly. But I was wrong. My sister had one more performance planned, one final act, and when she took the mic, everything we had tried to quietly endure came crashing down in front of everyone. The speeches started after dinner. The maid of honor went first, a sorority friend of Jasmine's, who made a few cute jokes and cried through a story about the time Jasmine saved her from a bad breakup. Then came Nathan's best friend, who toasted the groom's loyalty and told a charming story about their childhood. Everyone clapped, laughed, sipped their wine. I was already planning how to exit quietly once the dancing began. Sophie had started nodding off, her head leaning on my shoulder. I kissed the top of her hair and told myself we could slip out once the spotlight shifted to the first dance. Maybe we could grab one of those mini cheesecakes on the way out and call it a night. Then Jasmine stood up and asked for the microphone. The room quieted immediately. She looked flawless. Her dress sparkled. Her makeup didn't budge. Her smile was wide and polished. The wedding planner handed her the mic and the DJ lowered the music. "Thank you all so much for coming," she said, looking out over the sea of perfectly curated guests. "I know it means the world to Nathan and me to have all the most important people in our lives here today." There was scattered applause. My mother raised her glass. Jasmine turned slightly and gestured toward her bridesmaids. "I want to thank my girls for the bachelorette trip in Miami, my cousin Dana for making sure my makeup didn't melt in this heat, and of course my amazing husband for being everything I prayed for." Nathan smiled, a little awkwardly. Jasmine reached down to brush his cheek with her hand, then turned toward the back of the room. Her eyes locked on me. "And of course," she said, "I'm so touched that my sister Maya made the trip. It must have been hard coming all this way. I mean, she came alone. No husband, no money, just a useless kid." There were a few stifled laughs. Someone gasped softly. I felt Sophie sit up straighter next to me, but I couldn't look at her. My ears were ringing. My throat tightened, and all the noise in the room became distant. Jasmine kept going, smiling. Family is family, right? Even when some of us make, let's just say, questionable choices. People weren't sure how to react. Some chuckled nervously. Others just looked down at their plates. I could feel my mother watching me, waiting to see how I would respond. When I didn't move, she leaned in toward the photographer at her table and said clearly, "Let's not ruin the photos with her face." It landed like a slap. My heart started pounding. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. I wanted to stand up, grab Sophie, and leave, but my legs wouldn't move. I kept thinking, she's just a kid. Don't let her see you cry. I turned to check on her, but her seat was empty. Panic shot through me. I stood up, looking around. That's when I saw her, already halfway to the DJ booth. My daughter, in her thrifted pink satin dress and glittery shoes, was walking across the dance floor like she belonged there, like the room wasn't full of people who had just watched her mother get humiliated. She walked right up to the DJ, said something I couldn't hear, and reached into the tiny backpack she'd been carrying. I didn't even remember she had it with her. I'd asked her earlier if she wanted me to carry it, but she said no. She wanted to keep her own things. The DJ looked confused. Then she handed him something small and black, a flash drive. He hesitated, then glanced toward me. I met his eyes and nodded. Sophie took the mic, and the room, still buzzing from Jasmine's speech, fell quiet again. She stood on tiptoe, brought the microphone to her mouth, and said, "I brought a video. Mom didn't know, but I think the groom should watch it before marrying her." Gasps echoed from every corner. Someone dropped a fork. Jasmine's face drained of color. Nathan turned to her, his brow furrowed. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I wanted to grab Sophie, pull her away, protect her from whatever chaos was about to explode, but my feet were rooted to the floor. The DJ looked to Nathan. "Sir?" Nathan nodded. "Play it." The lights dimmed. The room fell into silence. Real silence this time. Not awkward, not unsure, just still. I reached for the back of a chair to steady myself because I knew, somehow, deep in my bones, I knew this was going to change everything. The DJ inserted the flash drive. The screen behind the wedding arch flickered to life. Jasmine lunged forward and grabbed the mic back from Sophie, her voice shrill. "Turn it off. That's not part of the schedule. She's just a kid. She doesn't know what she's doing." Nathan stepped between her and the DJ. "Let it play." She froze. The room froze. Even the servers near the back of the hall stopped moving. The first image on the screen was a still photo of Jasmine, taken just a few weeks earlier. She was sitting on a couch, drink in hand, texting. Then the video started to play. A voice recording came first. Jasmine's voice, casual and cold, filled the speakers. "He's boring. But the man's got money. And that house. Have you seen the kitchen? I'm not passing that up because of morals. Morals don't pay mortgages." A few people gasped. One woman, seated with Nathan's family, put a hand over her mouth. Jasmine screamed, "It's edited. That's not real." But her voice in the recording continued. "I'll stay married for 2 years tops. Then I'll walk away with the condo and alimony. Maybe a baby if I'm strategic. You don't marry for love anymore. You marry for leverage." The footage cut to screenshots. Text messages between Jasmine and a friend named Trish scrolled across the screen. Jasmine's name was clearly visible at the top. Jasmine: "He's dumb enough to think I love him. I can't even fake being interested in his job." Trish: "Girl, don't get caught." Jasmine: "He's not smart enough to catch me, and once I get pregnant, it's game over." Nathan stood perfectly still, his eyes locked on the screen. Jasmine ran to him, grabbing his arm. "It's fake. It's a prank. This is Maya's doing. She's trying to ruin my life." Nathan pulled away. The next clip showed a short video. Jasmine sitting in her car, speaking into the camera. "This family is so full of losers. Maya's over there pretending to be a mom when she can't even afford real shoes for that kid. She should have given her up for adoption. I only invited her to the wedding so people could see what rock bottom looks like." The room was dead silent. Sophie had returned to my side. I knelt down to her level. "How did you get that?" I whispered. "I used your old phone," she said. "It had her messages. She borrowed it once, remember? I saw her record things too." My stomach twisted. I had forgotten Jasmine ever touched that phone, but Sophie hadn't. I stood slowly, unsure of what would come next. My heart ached for Sophie, who should never have had to carry something so heavy. She had done it because no one else would. Nathan stepped forward. "Is there more?" he asked the DJ. "One last clip," the DJ said quietly. The screen showed Jasmine, drunk at a bar, laughing with 2 other women. She said, "After this wedding, I'm going to block his whole family. I already told his mom I'd visit for Sunday dinners. Yeah, right." The lights came back on. No one moved. No one clapped. No one knew what to do. Jasmine turned toward me, eyes blazing. "You set this up. You sick. Jealous." Nathan cut her off. "You lied to me. You mocked my family. You made a fool out of me in front of everyone I love." "I didn't mean it," she snapped. "It was just jokes. Private jokes." He shook his head. "You didn't just disrespect me. You hurt a child. You humiliated your own sister at your wedding." She stared at him like she didn't recognize his face anymore. "So what, you're calling it off?" "I'm not marrying someone who sees people as tools." Then he turned to me. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." I nodded, unable to speak. Sophie squeezed my hand. Jasmine stormed out. Her mother, our mother, didn't follow. She sat there, stunned. For once she had nothing to say. And as everyone looked at me, at my daughter, I didn't feel ashamed. I didn't feel like the black sheep. I felt seen. Sophie had handed the truth to a room that didn't want to hear it, and they heard it anyway. Jasmine stood in the doorway, stunned. Her veil had been torn in the rush to storm off, and her bouquet had fallen to the floor like a dropped lie. Nathan didn't follow her. He stayed planted in the center of the room, fists clenched at his sides, chest rising with shallow breaths. He looked like someone who had just discovered a crack in the foundation he'd built his life on. No one said a word. The silence was louder than the music had been. I felt my daughter's hand wrap tighter around mine. She looked up at me, her eyes wide but steady. She hadn't cried. She hadn't backed down. She didn't ask if she'd done the right thing. She already knew. Nathan walked toward his mother's table, where his younger sister sat with a trembling wine glass in hand. He bent down and whispered something. His mother stood up without a word and wrapped him in a tight, fierce hug. Then she walked past Jasmine, who had returned to the edge of the reception hall, shouting things I couldn't make out. Her voice was cracking, unraveling. "Where's Dad?" she called out, spinning in her heels, looking for someone, anyone who might back her up. "Where's Mom?" Cynthia hadn't moved. She stayed seated at her table with her hands in her lap, staring straight ahead like a statue. She didn't defend Jasmine. She didn't speak. She didn't even blink. She just watched her youngest daughter fall apart in front of her guests. Sophie tugged on my arm. "Can we go?" I looked down at her, stunned by her calm. "Yes, we can." We turned toward the back exit, slipping between the tables as whispers picked up behind us. A few guests looked away. Others looked at me with something close to apology. I didn't need their pity. I wasn't leaving in shame. Then I heard a voice from behind. "Maya, wait." I turned around. Nathan was walking toward us, face pale but calm. He stopped a few feet away, careful not to come too close, and looked directly at Sophie. "You're brave," he said. "You knew the truth and you shared it. You protected your mom. That matters more than anything that happened here today." Sophie didn't say anything. She just gave a small nod and leaned closer to my side. Then he looked at me. "I'm sorry for what they did to you," he said. "I should have seen it. I should have known the kind of person I was marrying." "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. "She fooled everyone. I know what that feels like." He gave a small, sad smile. "Maybe this saved me." "Maybe it saved both of us," I replied. We stepped outside into the cool evening air. The sky was streaked with the last hints of sunset, orange fading into blue. Sophie reached up and wrapped her arms around my waist. I held her tight, pressing my face into her hair. I didn't cry. I thought I might. I thought the weight of what just happened would crush me, but instead I felt light. I felt free. Inside that building, I had been humiliated in front of the same people who had ignored and discarded me for years, but I had also watched my child stand up and speak truth with more courage than most adults had ever shown me. And now, finally, I could walk away from all of it with my head held high. My phone buzzed in my purse. A message from my mother. "You should have stopped her. She ruined everything." I deleted it without reading the rest. As we walked to the car, Sophie looked up and said, "Was that okay?" "What do you mean?" Doing what I did. Showing the video, I stopped and turned to her. "It was more than okay. It was right. It was hard, but it was right." She smiled, and for the first time all night, it wasn't the polite smile of a child trying to hold herself together. It was real, confident, peaceful. She buckled herself into the back seat as I started the car. I sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, heart still racing. She had shown the truth, not just to the guests, not just to Nathan, but to me. She reminded me of who I was, of what I'd been surviving, of how strong we both really were. I turned the key, looked at her through the rearview mirror, and said, "Let's go home." The ride home was quiet, but it wasn't heavy. Sophie leaned her head against the window and hummed softly to a song on the radio. I kept my eyes on the road, but my mind was still in that wedding hall. I wasn't thinking about Jasmine or my mother. I wasn't even thinking about what people would say after the dust settled. I was thinking about what it meant to have someone so small, so young, be so fearless on my behalf. When we pulled into our apartment parking lot, Sophie looked at me and asked, "Will I get in trouble for what I did?" "No," I said, turning in my seat. "You did something most grown-ups are too afraid to do. You stood up when it counted. You didn't just protect me. You stood up for the truth." She nodded like she was still processing it, then said, "I didn't like how they looked at you. Like you didn't matter." That broke me more than anything Jasmine ever said. I reached back and held her hand. "You saw it too?" "I always see it," she whispered. That night, after I tucked her into bed, I sat in the kitchen alone. The wedding had ended hours earlier, but my phone was still buzzing. Missed calls from Cynthia, a text from my uncle asking what really happened, a voicemail from Jasmine full of screaming and denial. I turned my phone off and left it face down on the counter. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. Not to them, not to anyone. For years, I carried guilt I didn't earn. I blamed myself for my divorce, for the family's judgment for not being the daughter they wanted. I let them make me feel like a failure because I chose to raise Sophie alone instead of stay with a man who broke me piece by piece. I tried to be quiet, polite, invisible, just to avoid another round of humiliation. And for what? So they could still strip me down in front of strangers like I was nothing? But I wasn't nothing, and I had never been. My daughter saw me as someone worth defending. That truth mattered more than 1,000 apologies that would never come. That night at the wedding wasn't just a turning point for Jasmine and Nathan, it was a turning point for me. I woke up the next morning feeling like I could breathe again. I made pancakes. Sophie added chocolate chips. We danced in the kitchen in our pajamas. For the first time in years, there wasn't a weight on my chest or a knot in my stomach. There was just peace. Over the next few weeks, word spread. Some family members reached out with carefully worded sympathy. Some offered half-hearted apologies. Others tried to pretend nothing had happened. I didn't respond to most of them. I didn't need closure from people who never saw my worth until they were forced to. Nathan sent me a message. Just one. I hope you and Sophie are okay. I still think about what she did. Thank you, we were okay. Sophie started writing stories in a notebook she kept hidden under her bed. One day, she let me read one. It was about a girl with a quiet mom and a loud family. In the story, the girl saved the day. I closed the notebook and hugged her tight. There was no grand reconciliation, no family reunion. Jasmine disappeared for a while. My mother posted old family photos with long captions about betrayal and shame, never using names but making her message clear. I didn't care. I didn't respond. What mattered was the lesson I took from that night. I had spent too long shrinking myself to fit into a family that never made space for me. I had been surviving on silence, trying to prove I was good enough when the truth was simple. I already was. Sophie showed me that. She reminded me of the kind of woman I used to be and the kind of woman I was becoming again. Strong, clear, steady, and not alone. My story didn't end with Jasmine's wedding. It started there. Because in the moment I was supposed to break, I found something stronger than anger or shame. I found my voice, and it sounded a lot like hers. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of your own strength or someone you love, don't forget to like the video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below. I read everyone, and your stories matter too. And if you want more true, powerful stories like this, hit that subscribe button and join the channel. This is a space for honesty, healing, and finding your voice, no matter how long it's been silent. Thanks for watching, and remember, the truth might hurt, but it also sets you free.